Scenic Hotel Group, a place to stay no matter your staycation. From the Legacy Collection for those special occasions, to Heartland Hotels, with room for the whole whānau. Find your place to stay at scenichotelgroup.co.nz.
It looks as though we'll know the post-World Cup All Blacks coach in the not-too-distant future. Gregor Paul, writing in the New Zealand Herald yesterday, said this: New Zealand rugby will dispense with its historic timeline of waiting until after the World Cup to determine the next All Blacks coach, and will instead, within the next 8 to 10 weeks, reveal who will be at the helm of the national team in 2024. Gregor Paul joins us now on Weekend Sport. Gregor, as you understand it, what is the process for this going to be?
Well, my understanding here is that Chief Executive Mark Rawlinson and his 2IC, Chris Lendrum, have made a recommendation, or will make that recommendation, to the New Zealand Rugby Board that they begin this process at the end of the month. They'll form a committee, I suppose, an interview committee. Not sure who'll be on that, a few sort of rugby experts and coaching experts. They will identify candidates, I think, rather than sort of asking for applications, and then they will interview those candidates, and then they'll make a preferred recommendation on who they want to be the next All Blacks coach, and that person will then be interviewed by the full rugby board and presumably appointed at that stage. And the timeline, they'll probably want to do it pretty quickly. It will depend on a few things, but probably by April they'll be able to announce who it is that they've decided will be the next coach.
Why do you think they want to do this so quickly?
Well, look, there's probably two reasons. They've convinced themselves that New Zealand rugby's fallen out of kilter with the rest of the world because virtually every top-tier nation has determined its long-term coach post this World Cup through various reasons. That's happened. So everyone's going to the World Cup knowing who's taking over from whom, or who's going to be staying as coach in those other countries. And secondly, they're worried about potential candidates being picked off by other countries, as we both know happened a lot in 2019. They left it until after the World Cup, and the field narrowed because Australia picked up Dave Rennie and Japan got Jamie Joseph back. So they want to secure a wider field, I suppose, by doing it early.
Does that danger, though, still exist? You're right, yeah, an early process will mitigate against candidates being picked off, as happened in 2019. Does that danger still exist?
In my view, no. Because I think if you were looking in November, it was clear that England had announced that they were going to be looking for a new coach after the World Cup. Wales, ditto. Australia, the same. So you could see that there were jobs beginning to build, and that those three countries in particular were probably going to look, February, March this year. So that was a real danger at that point. But then all three of them made a decision to fire their incumbent and just get on with finding a long-term replacement now, which they've all done. So if you're worried about Scott Robertson in particular, finding an international job somewhere else, well, there actually isn't one. There isn't a realistic job for him to go to at the moment, because Wales, Australia, England are all taken. Scotland have been mentioned, but they had a stunning victory this morning against England at Twickenham, and I don't think that they're about to dispense with Gregor Townsend easily, so I don't even think the Scots job will come up. So where are these guys going to go? So the other nations have actually taken the pressure off New Zealand and given them a longer window in which they can do this without fear of losing the guys that they want to be applying for the job.
All right, interesting little layer to it. But as you write, they're all in on this process by the looks of it. Gregor, can you see a scenario under which Ian Foster is All Blacks coach this time next year?
If they're doing the process now, as they seem committed to be, no. I don't think anyone can, because I think there are two factors here. One, his record today is not outstanding, and I think even he would admit that. So I think it's at 69%. That's unlikely to convince anyone at this stage that they want to push on with that. And secondly, there's obviously been a little feeling of public discontent, media discontent with the way the team's performed. There's still a hangover from the way that the process was conducted in 2019, which made people feel uncomfortable. whether he was the best guy for the job or not. So if you're going to do the process now or in the next few weeks, I can't see it. And the danger there, as I've mentioned, is I think it's a stunningly disrespectful way to treat the incumbent coaching group. 2, it prevents them from having the ability to apply for their own job, really, that group, because I don't think they'll be taken seriously, because what they really need is to go to the World Cup and be judged on that. But they're probably going to be going to the World Cup knowing that they're not going to be involved in 2024. And it's weird because the board backed them in August last year. They had effectively looked at bringing in Scott Robertson at that point, decided, no, we're going to stick with Foster. He's brought in Joe Schmidt. He's got Jason Ryan. And now they're effectively going to look at that group and cut them off in the next 6 weeks and say, no, you can go to the World Cup, but we don't rate you enough to keep you in the job past that.
Is there any merit in that, though, Gregor, saying to Ian Foster, right, just go and win us the World Cup. Unclutter your mind. Don't worry about anything else. Just go and win us the World Cup and end your All Blacks coaching career on a high.
Well, look, professional sport works like that, doesn't it? There's no guarantees. That might be what happens. But you have to say, is that the right thing for the team? Is that the right environment for them to be operating in, where the coaches effectively did that? What does that give other coaching groups, rival coaching groups, a great opportunity to belittle the All Blacks in the media, to basically say, well, look, they're going to the World Cup with a guy that they don't even rate. Now, the headlines start manifesting at the World Cup about Foster not being the guy that they want. What does it do for motivation levels inside the camp? What does it do for the pressure that will build inside the camp? All these questions need to be asked. It's probably an unsettling environment to end up with that. I don't think it's in the best interest of the All Blacks to go there. And you kind of want to say, look, if they decide that they're going to appoint Razor, which they may well do, and he finishes up with the Crusaders, why wouldn't you just say to him, take the team to the World Cup? Start now. What's the point? If you've already determined that he's the better guy, why wait? Why give the incumbent group the World Cup and then make the change? Why not just make it immediately? So that all of these things don't really stack up as a good, logical, high-performance plan that's giving the All Blacks the best chance of winning the World Cup. All you need to do is say, look, we're going to have a process after the World Cup, and that way you're going to broaden the field to presumably Razor, Jamie Joseph, and the incumbent group can all go head-to-head against each other, and you have a process that says, look, every available coach went for that, and we've decided that whoever is the best guy. And then the country can get behind it and believe in the credibility and authenticity of that. And all this kind of lingering discontent that we've had the last 4 years will disappear because we'll have to assume that the process was fair, reasonable, and accurate, and that they got the right guy.
Let's assume they go with Scott Robertson under this process that you've outlined here, because that is a likely scenario, isn't it, that they appoint Scott Robertson to be the next All Blacks coach post the World Cup. Would you expect him to have any input at all in 2023?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Good question. He's going to be sitting there because he won't, he'll be part of the New Zealand rugby system because he'll have been with the Crusaders. Well, you're not going to take him to the World Cup. Could he have some input from the sidelines to steer it? And then you start thinking, well, why don't you just make him the head coach at that point? If you're going to give him any influence, why not all the influence? So it's a very good question what they would do. And the answer will be they won't do that. They'll say to him, you need to sit quietly over here, having nothing to do with the All Blacks, despite the fact we know that you're going to be taking over in 2024. So that's probably the scenario that will kick through. And I think it probably puts a hell of a lot of pressure on Ian Foster during Super Rugby when, he's trying to build an All Black team and he knows that the Crusaders coach is a guy that's going to be taking over from him in 2024. It's going to put a bit of a strain on their relationship and working out how they all work together. And I just think it's going to be a catastrophic mess, the way that this is going to play through.
Just to finish, this is a narrow field, Gregor. In fact, is it only a field of one? Is there anybody else apart from Scott Robertson who New Zealand rugby will even look at?
Oh, look, Jamie Joseph will clearly be interested. He's currently with Japan with Tony Brown, and I think they've probably privately signalled that they would be interested in applying, and they'll be able to because they're under contract to Japan, but that finishes after the World Cup. So they're another reason why this process is being pulled forward to give them a chance to do that. Vern Cotter, he went for the job in 2011. He's just suddenly and dramatically resigned at Fiji, and he's a credible candidate, by the way. Absolutely good candidate. Coached Scotland, coached Fiji, a lot of experience. He'd be a good guy. He's also very friendly with Joe Schmidt, and those two have coached together. So there is an outside possibility that Vern and Joe get together and put in a bid. But again, Joe's currently part of Ian Foster's team. That's going to be awkward if his own guy is back, jumps into bed with another guy while he's still working with Ian. That feels, again, awkward. But look, these guys are probably all available effectively. So no, I don't think it's a one-horse race. I think there's a few. And look, Dave Rennie, we don't know what he's up to, whether he's got any desire to work in New Zealand again, or if he's interested in being an international coach. But clearly another credible name. If he's interested, he could come into it.
Such an interesting time. Always love chatting rugby with you, Gregor. Thanks for taking the time, and look forward to seeing what plays out over the next little while.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it.